Have you ever felt like your life was frozen in time, stuck in a routine that's hard to escape? For Sarah, at 45, this wasn't just a feeling, it was her daily reality. The smell of new tires and the cold gleam of polished cars at the dealership where she worked had become the scent and landscape of her resignation. Every day, she put on a professional smile that didn't reach her brown eyes, eyes that once dreamed of travels and passions, but now only reflected exhaustion. Her red hair, with a few silver strands she didn't bother to hide, was often tied in a hasty bun, as if she herself wanted to contain any trace of spontaneity. In her silent prayers, in traffic on the way to work, she asked God for a way out, a new door, anything to rescue her from that sea of indifference. And then, on a particularly monotonous Tuesday, the change she had so longed for walked through the glass doors of the shop. He wasn't a customer, nor an employee. It was David, a business partner who stopped by sporadically. He didn't walk. He seemed to glide across the showroom with a confidence that violently contrasted with the environment. Tall, with dark hair and a smile that seemed to hold a fun secret, David carried an energy that filled the space. But what really captured Sarah's attention was something more subtle. In the world of artificial perfumes and industrial odors, he had a natural, clean scent, a fragrance of skin and confidence that deeply intrigued her. She watched him from a distance. They exchanged formal greetings, but each brief interaction was like a small electric shock to her anesthetized system. Sarah's platonic admiration might have died right there, between reports and spreadsheets, if it weren't for her colleague, Laura, an observant woman with no filter. One afternoon, while David was talking to the manager on the other side of the room, Laura approached Sarah and whispered with a knowing smile, "Have you noticed? He never wears perfume, but he always smells so good. Go on, be subtle, and walk past him. You'll see." The comment, said jokingly, was the permission Sarah didn't know she needed. It was the spark that ignited her curiosity. From that day on, Sarah's glances were no longer just of distant admiration. They became investigative, curious. And to her surprise, David's piercing blue eyes began to meet hers more frequently, holding her gaze for a second longer than was professionally necessary. The trivial conversations about the weather and work gained a new layer of meaning, an electric subtext that vibrated just below the surface. A farewell hug at the end of a workday, a casual touch on the arm during a laugh. The air between them began to grow dense, charged with a silent promise, and Sarah, for the first time in years, felt the ground beneath her feet begin to tremble with the possibility of something new and dangerous. The weeks that followed were a delicious torture for Sarah. The subtle flirtation turned into a magnetic game from which neither of them could escape. The conversations evolved. They stopped talking about cars and the weather to dive into their lives, their forgotten dreams and their present frustrations. Sarah found herself telling David about the passion for gardening she had abandoned, and he confessed his desire to one day have a small workshop to restore antique furniture. They were small windows into each other's souls, and with each new discovery, the connection deepened, becoming dangerously intimate. The year of hugs and conversations that life gave them was a time of cultivation, where the seed of initial attraction germinated and grew deep roots in both of their hearts. Each encounter was one more step in a dangerous dance, and Sarah knew with a mix of panic and euphoria that they were approaching a point of no return. The day that changed everything began like any other. David was at the dealership for a meeting that stretched into the late afternoon. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple through the showroom's glass panes, and most of the employees had already left. Sarah was finishing a report on her computer when she felt the weight of a gaze upon her. She looked up, and her eyes met David's, who was standing near the main door, ready to leave, but he didn't move. For 1, 2, 10 seconds, the world around them disappeared. The hum of the computers, the distant sound of traffic, everything dissolved into absolute silence. In that look, there was no more playfulness or subtext. There was a clear question, a raw vulnerability, and a desire so palpable that Sarah felt her heart race. She didn't look away. For the first time, she let her eyes respond with the same intensity, with the same truth. A universe of promises was exchanged in that silence. Slowly, David nodded, an almost imperceptible gesture, and left. Sarah stood frozen, the air knocked out of her lungs. Had she imagined it? But before doubt could settle in, her cell phone, forgotten on the desk, vibrated. The name David shone on the screen. With trembling hands, she answered. His voice on the other end, coming directly from his car's speakerphone, was a bit breathless, urgent. Sarah, I need to tell you something. I couldn't leave. I want to kiss you. Now. Sarah's world spun. Reason screamed no, but her heart, so long dormant, screamed yes. Where? Was all she could whisper. In the back of the parking lot, near the service area. No one will see us, he replied. Without a second thought, she grabbed her purse, muttered some excuse to the security guard, and slipped out a side door like a fugitive. When she found him leaning against his car, under the dim light of a lamppost, there were no more words. He walked to her, held her face in both hands and kissed her. It was a kiss that carried the hunger of months of restrained desire, a kiss that was both a reunion and a discovery. The dream she had barely dared to have was becoming a reality. In that moment, wrapped in his arms, Sarah felt more alive than she had in years. Little did she know that, along with the euphoria of that kiss, a devastating detail was about to surface, a truth that would turn her dream into a complex and painful labyrinth. Is this story getting to you? If you're feeling the intensity of this forbidden love and rooting for Sarah and David, take a quick break, leave a like to help us bring more stories like this, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss a second of what fate has in store for them. Now let's get back to the story. The euphoria of that first kiss lasted exactly until the moment they returned to reality inside David's car. The silence that settled was no longer one of complicity but of weight. It was Sarah who broke it, her voice still trembling. That was intense. David turned to her, and the joy in his eyes had been replaced by a shadow of anguish. Sarah, I need to be honest with you. Completely honest. Her stomach turned to ice. And then the words she feared but didn't expect came. I'm married. Each syllable was like a stab. The fairy tale world that had been built in the last few minutes crumbled into ruins. Sarah felt her face burn with shame and anger. Married? And you kiss me like that? What do you think I am? She opened the car door, but he grabbed her by the arm, his voice desperate. Please wait. It's not that simple. My marriage? It's been over for a long time. We just still live in the same house. Sarah shook her head, tears beginning to well up. I can't, David. I'm not the kind of woman who gets involved with a married man. She tried. For days, she ignored him. She didn't answer his calls. She changed her route at the company to avoid him. Every day was a battle against her own heart, which ached with longing. But David didn't give up. He sent her long messages, not with apologies, but explaining his feelings, his loneliness, the way she had rescued him from an emptiness he didn't even know existed. He wasn't asking for an affair. He was begging for a chance to have her in his life. Sarah's heart began to yield. Maybe she was judging too quickly. Maybe his situation was really more complex. She agreed to meet him for a talk, and it was at that meeting that the second bomb dropped, an even more devastating one. With a choked voice, he confessed, and there's one more thing, Sarah. My wife, she's pregnant. The floor opened up beneath Sarah's feet. This time, it seemed final. It was a sign from the universe, a dead end. "It's over, David," she said, with a coldness she didn't feel. "There's no way we can go on with this. Go back to your family. It's the right thing to do." But his response shocked her. "No," he said, with unwavering firmness, holding her hands across the coffee shop table. "You don't understand. You are the right thing that happened in my life at the wrong time. The pregnancy doesn't change what I feel for you. On the contrary, it just shows me what I'll lose if I let you go." From that day on, David began a tireless campaign, not only to win Sarah back, but to prove that she was his absolute priority. He started to build a parallel universe where they were the only couple in the world. There were weekend trips to small towns where no one knew them, and they could walk hand in hand down the street without fear. There were dinners in discreet restaurants, unexpected gifts that arrived at her apartment, not expensive, but full of meaning. He treated her like a princess, listening to her every word, validating her every feeling, filling every void that loneliness had left in her. Slowly, against all her better judgment, Sarah allowed herself to dive into that love. It was a secret love, a love that lived in the shadows of David's official life, but under the moonlight in his arms, it felt like the only real thing in the world. 2 years passed, 2 years of living a double life, woven with threads of passion and secrecy. Sarah and David's love not only survived the obstacles, but flourished in their private sanctuary, a small apartment they rented, a refuge that was only theirs. There was no wife or daughter, just a man and a woman who loved each other with an intensity that defied logic. David's daughter was born and grew, and the excuse for not separating became stronger and, at the same time, more painful. Sarah had learned to live with the pang of sadness that came with holidays and weekends, but the love she received from David in the moments they had together was so overwhelming that it compensated for the absence. They had become masters at stealing moments of happiness, building a sense of normalcy within a completely abnormal situation. The hope of one day being together for good still existed, but it had become a soft ember, one that warmed more than it burned. It was on a Sunday afternoon, during lunch at a small, vintage-style bistro they loved, that the universe decided it was time to reveal its great secret. The restaurant was decorated with relics from the past, and on a shelf near their table there was an old typewriter. Sarah smiled, nostalgic. "I remember taking typing classes on a machine just like this," she commented, running her fingers over the dusty keys. David laughed. "My first experience with a keyboard was in a computer class back in 1998 or so. I was just a kid." He mentioned the name of the mall where he took the course, a large shopping center on the other side of town. Sarah's heart gave a sudden, inexplicable leap. "Wait, I worked at that mall around the same time, in a men's clothing store." David stopped eating, his fork suspended in midair. He stared at her, his blue eyes narrowing as a distant memory struggled to surface. A clothing store. There was a girl in that store. Red hair, a smile that made me awkward. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "David." "Oh," she whispered, the puzzle starting to piece itself together in her mind in a frightening way. He continued, his voice now lower, as if in a trance. "I had a huge crush on her. I saved my money for weeks just to buy a t-shirt I didn't even want, just to get the courage to ask her out." The pieces fell into place with a seismic crash in Sarah's soul. The memories, buried under 25 years of life, resurfaced with the force of a flood. A shy boy with dark hair, the nervousness on their first date at the movies, the walk under the mall lights. "The date," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "We went on a date, and you kissed me." The penny dropped for David. The shock on his face turned into pure wonder. "Sarah, was that you? All that time? It was you?" It wasn't a first meeting. It was a reunion. The overwhelming love they felt hadn't been born 2 years ago at the dealership. It was merely the continuation of a melody that had begun a quarter of a century earlier, and which fate, in its mysterious wisdom, had paused, only to give them a chance to start over. The discovery at the restaurant wasn't an endpoint, but a new beginning. What followed was a torrent of shared memories, laughter, and tears of pure disbelief. They spent hours reconstructing that teenage past, remembering details that alone made no sense, but together painted the portrait of a love that time had only put to sleep. That stolen kiss in the dealership parking lot hadn't been the first chapter, but rather the resumption of a book that had been left with a bookmark in it for 25 long years. This revelation changed everything. It didn't alter the difficult circumstances of the present, but it transformed the way they faced them. The burden of secrecy was replaced by the strength of certainty. Their love was not a mistake or a coincidence, it was a predestined reunion. For Sarah, the discovery was a healing. The 45-year-old woman who felt trapped and invisible now saw herself as the protagonist of the most incredible love story she had ever known. The waiting, the pain of lonely moments, the complexity of the situation. Everything gained a new purpose. She wasn't just waiting for a married man to make up his mind. She was honoring a pact between souls that fate had drawn up. Her patience transformed into conviction. For David, the truth was a liberation. The weight of guilt he carried diminished, replaced by the clarity that his connection with Sarah was the most authentic force in his life. The obligation he felt towards his young daughter didn't disappear, and he remained determined to be a present father, not wanting another man to raise her. But now, he knew that his future belonged to Sarah, and this certainty guided all of his actions. Today, their life continues to be a secret to the world, but not to them. The apartment they share is no longer a hideout, but the only true home their hearts know. Every moment together is lived with the reverence of someone who knows they are reclaiming lost time. They look to the future no longer with fragile hope, but with the tranquility of someone who knows the end of the movie. They know that the day they can walk hand in hand under the sun without fear will come. They don't know when or how, but doubt no longer torments them. Their story wasn't about a casual encounter that became a forbidden love. It was about a reunion of souls that proved that true love is not lost in time. It just waits patiently for the opportunity to begin again. And in that certainty, they found the peace to live in the present, one day at a time, as guardians of the longest and most patient love story that fate has ever written. Whether we'll end up together or not, only destiny will tell, but every second lived by his side is worth it. So what did you think of this incredible story of fate? Do you believe in soulmates, or do you think it was all just a big coincidence? Leave your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to tell us which city you're watching from. If you were moved by Sarah and David's journey, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. And if you want to binge watch our other videos, just click on one of the ones appearing on the screen. Take care and see you next time.